Hello, and welcome to Improbable Things. I'm J. Grace Pennington, and this is my podcast where I share 6 improbable thoughts before breakfast, which consists of 6 thoughts about reading, writing, or just storytelling in some form or fashion. So I am up early this Thursday morning with 6 things ready to share with you. So number 1, I've been working away on the Time Stream rewrites, my current novel that was originally hoping to be published this month. It's probably going to be next month at this rate because it's just going slowly. But it is going, and I think, get over the hump of the hardest part. I had to basically completely rewrite the opening and rearrange some stuff from the first couple of chapters. But I think I've gotten over those parts, and I think from here it's going to be a lot smoother. It'll mostly just be, tweaks, double checking that I have things straight, and just making sure that everything flows well, that sentences are not confusing, etc., that kind of detailed stuff. So that should go much more quickly, hopefully. But either way, I'm working on it a little at a time and making progress. So that's good. I do think it's going well. I do think that the bigger changes that I made to the first couple chapters are going to be really beneficial. I'll talk a little bit more about that later, but it was stuff that definitely needed to be happened. So it's going to be worth the bit, more effort that required. So number 2, I've actually, I know I've talked before about having to change my routine at times when something stops working, which is hard for me. I like to cling to routine and to doing things the same way, but at a certain point I just had to admit this is not working. And so I have been doing my writing in the afternoons for a while because I didn't like getting up super early. But I've just found lately, it just was not happening. I'm so, my brain is just kind of tired in the afternoons from having worked with my girls all morning at school, taking care of the house, just taking care of the girls because they're little and loud and have a lot of requirements, which is totally normal at this life stage. But it was really hard for me to get myself into writing in the afternoon. And I just really did not like doing it and was struggling to get into the zone of work. And so I finally decided earlier, or I guess last week, that I needed to start just getting up an hour earlier again so that I could really just put some energy into that first thing in the morning, really focus in a quiet house, all of that. And I've struggled to get going with that, but this morning I did do it, got up at 5 a.m. And got a bunch of work done on the book, and that felt really good. So I'm hoping the memory of how well that worked will get me out of bed going forward, because I really think this is a better fit than trying to do it later in the day. Just my creative juices are basically just completely asleep later in the day. So we'll see how that goes. And then number 2, I decided last time I did some recording a couple days ago. I was able to go get some more recording done on the next audiobook, and I decided it would be a good idea to get some short stories recorded to get up on YouTube as well. Just keep having some content up there while I'm waiting to be able to get the next 2 Firmament books up. So I did record a short story that I'm going to try to get up sometime this week. Very short. The recording only ended up being 7 minutes, which probably is a little shorter than I usually want to go with YouTube, but it's just one more piece of content to try to add to reach my goals on there. So I'll keep y'all updated with that. And I'm excited to just kind of repurpose some of my content into, audio and videos and all that. Number 4, and this is very exciting. I finished reading my girls the entire Little House series, which was really a great journey. I love getting to share just such classics with them, and then just seeing the way that Laura grows from a small child all the way to grown and married with her own child, and just the hardships that they endure, and all that was great. I was crying at the end. But anyway, that's not what I was going to share. So when we wrapped that up, I decided I'm finally going to start reading them the Chronicles of Narnia, which I've been waiting for a while because I wanted, them to be old enough to be able to appreciate it. And so I finally decided that they would really enjoy it. So I started just a few days ago reading them The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe. And we're only a few chapters in, but it's already been so fun just to see them react to it. And already they're going, okay, we've seen the wardrobe and the witch, but who's the lion, And then they're asking me things about what's happening and having thoughts about it. And I don't know, it's just, I remember so clearly being read those as a child. We also had them on cassette tape and reading them myself so many times, watching the movies. Like, it was just such a huge part of my childhood, but also my whole life, really. And so getting to share it with them is so exciting for me. And it'll last us a while because we don't, I read to them during lunch. Basically, I can read until the baby starts getting upset, which does not always take very long. So it'll last us a while to get the whole series. And I am so excited for the whole thing. So number 5, I'm currently reading One Perfect Couple by Ruth Ware. I've read a couple of her books before at the recommendation of a friend, and I just was feeling like kind of some, what do you call it, like, I guess, literary junk food. These are just, fun thrillers, not with really a lot of substance, but I just was feeling like getting kind of sucked into something, so I picked one up at the library, just whatever they had, and started reading it. And definitely, I can't really recommend her books because they have a lot of language and immorality, and they can be quite, like, some of the things that happen can be a bit brutal. So don't recommend it on that level, but it definitely is sucking me in, which is exactly what I was hoping for, making me wonder what's going on. I just started it a couple days ago, and I'm more than a third of the way through, so it should be quick, which is also good because I have a lot of books that I need to read. But yeah, I'm enjoying it so far. Really curious to see how it turns out. I'm kind of starting to form theories, and just the way she writes it is interesting, which I'm going to get into in just a minute. But yeah, I'm very interested to finish this one. So number 6, reading One Perfect Couple along with a couple of other things has kind of got me thinking again about how the way a story is told matters so much. That it's not just the story itself, but like the way that you choose to tell it, the things you choose to reveal and to keep hidden, all of that matters so much when it comes to the reader experience of the story and how much it's going to pull someone in and in what way. And that does depend so much on what kind of book it is. Like with One Perfect Couple, this is not a spoiler because this is all right at the beginning. It kind of seems on the surface at first that it's just this story about a couple who's, they're dating, living together, kind of having, maybe a few struggles, nothing major, and then they decide to go on this reality couples TV show. And, that's kind of what it seems like. It's just basically about that. But right away that there's something else going on because the chapters that are, the story as it unfolds, those are sort of interspersed with little pages that have someone, if in the future, frantically talking on a radio about awful things that are going on this island. And so you have to wonder, okay, how did they get there? Like, what is happening? What went wrong? And it just slowly reveals little bits through those radio conversations as the sort of seemingly normal story is unfolding. And that makes it so much more than just like this story about a couple going on a TV show. You can know right away, like, that this is some kind of thriller, and you right away are having a gap between, one set of things and another set of things and you're trying to fill in that gap, and that's kind of sucking you in and wondering. And then recently I listened to a Harlan Coben audiobook called I Will Find You, which also really don't recommend. It was definitely rough in places, but he is very, very good at that, like sucking you into a thriller. And I noticed there too, there's a lot of things where information will be intentionally withheld in order to draw you in, which seems kind of almost like a gimmick or just like a trick, but that is what builds tension. Like if you just came right out and said, like if Ruth Ware in the One Perfect Couple had immediately taken you behind the scenes, like I have no idea what's going on in the story still, but let's say some of their troubles are the result of some kind of plot from someone. If she immediately had taken you into that person's plot and all their plans and what was going on, then there might still be a certain amount of tension, wondering how are people going to survive these problems or whatever, but it wouldn't have the same, I don't think it would have that same suction of like just wondering, like the things that you don't know pulling you in. And that was the case in I Will Find You as well. Like she could have, like, again, this is not a spoiler because this happens within the first couple chapters. There's a guy in prison for allegedly having killed his son, and then someone comes and visits him and tells him, I don't think your son's actually dead, and then they're having to figure out what happened. And again, Coben could have just come out and told you, the story of what happened in the past and then gone, and now this guy is serving a life sentence for something he didn't do or whatever. But that would not have had the force to propel you into the rest of the story, which is this main character trying to figure out what happened and trying to find his son and trying to, uncover all the clues. And there's definitely times that things are withheld very intentionally in order to pull you forward and to make you go, okay, what's happening? And then something small will be revealed. Maybe there's something small that the author reveals that the main characters don't know yet. And so then you start wondering, okay, well, when are they going to figure that out? Like it keeps you wondering different kinds of things going through the story. And that is what gives it the momentum. But that also doesn't mean that that is the strategy for every story. Like there's other books I've read recently, like I read The Summer Before the War, recently read, and I know I talked about The Bird in the Tree. Those are not thrillers, and they do not have that same kind of pace and that same kind of effect, and they're not supposed to. Like they're supposed to be more the drama of these families and relationships, and the tension is different. In The Summer Before the War, the tension is how is the war affecting this English community, and how are the class structures of the time affecting people, and so it has a very different kind of tension that pulls you into the story in a different and slower kind of way, because that's the story it's supposed to be. So it really depends so much on what you're wanting to accomplish. And so that's actually some of the things I've had to think about as I'm rewriting these first few chapters of Time Stream, because one of really the biggest issue that beta readers had with it was an issue of pacing and of the way the story unfolds. Because at the very beginning of the story, Andy instantly comes to this conclusion that this strange thing that is happening to her is time travel. And all my readers are like, that just seems awfully sudden to accept such a major thing and to get the reader to accept it. Even in a science fiction story, like you need to build your credibility. And so I ended up having to go back and have things be a little more uncertain for a while and be like, okay, what is going on? Is this some kind of hallucination, or just kind of going through other possibilities and going through this, just them trying to figure out what's going on in a more, just a little bit more of a gradual way, but wanting to do that without losing the momentum of the story. So I still want these dramatic things to be happening, like kind of right out of the gate. I want the story to get going with these incidents that are propelling you into the rest of the story, but to do that in a way that is not so certain about what's happening, like to then give some tension about what's going on. And so to do that, I then had to also change some things so that there are things that the characters don't see and don't realize, so that, again, the reader also won't. So just the revelation of information in a story and how you do it and when and in what order, I feel like is one of the most important things when telling a story and with what kind of story you're choosing to tell. And of course, that will vary from author to author and from story to story and genre to genre and all of that. But it's just something I'm noticing more and more as I read and as I write. And because I just think it so much, like there could be a story and you give it to two people and they will tell it in such completely different ways that it's a different story. So much of it is in how the story is actually told, not just in what really happens. So I've been doing lots of thinking about that, clearly, and I'm noticing it more and more in fiction, and now maybe you will too. So thank you all so much for listening. Please let me know if you've read any thrillers or suspense and have noticed that sort of tactic of how information is revealed and in what order. And if there's any good examples of that maybe I could look into and maybe would continue to teach me about this strategy. And then, of course, your thoughts on the Chronicles of Narnia, and did you read them as a child, and is that part of your childhood memories the way it is of mine? I always love to talk about those books. And then, of course, just love to have conversations with other story lovers about any books or any thoughts about any of this or really any other book and story related things. I always love my discussions with any of you about these topics. So again, thank you all so much for listening. I hope that everyone has a great day and a great weekend ahead, and stay improbable. Bye!